Hi there, we're here in Toronto, Ontario. What happens is with mental health, it's an issue that I feel that people should stop being labeled. People should start, dealing with people as people. We are all human beings. And what we've done is we've gone out, we found a gentleman who has been diagnosed with bipolar disorder, and yet he's gone on, he's been a very successful individual, not only a professional photographer, a radio host, motivational speaker. With that said, I'd like now introduce Barry Shainbaum. Barry, the first question I have to ask you, taking you back to when you were 18 years old, leading up to the symptoms just before you're diagnosed, what were the symptoms, if you don't mind describing briefly?
Oh, it's all fine. I should say I was previously diagnosed. I walked away from the illness 23 years ago. I was 18 years old in Hamilton, and it started with hallucinations and delusions. And that's how it started.
And then you spent I think you were saying 3 months in one of those psych ward hospitals, and then 3 years being, before you were diagnosed, and you're put on this drug called lithium. Could you talk a little bit about that time, and also what kind of effects did the drug give you? What kind of side effects?
Well, I spent a whole summer in a locked psychiatric ward at Hamilton General Hospital in Hamilton, and it was 4 years later when I had more hallucinations. This time I was a police officer, and I pulled a car over on the way to see my psychiatrist. But the actual later labeling of manic depression, which I usually have, came with serious mood swings besides the hallucinations with how it all started. Now, what was your second question?
Well, what kind of side effects did you have from the drug that they prescribed for you?
Well, I was really lucky. I had no side effects. I was one of the lucky ones, not even dry mouth, because all meds have side effects, but I was extremely lucky. I went off it prematurely many years later, which caused other troubles, because 20 years and more on lithium carbonate can destroy the kidneys. And that's a permanent side effect if the drug destroys your kidneys. But when I was taking it, I was very lucky. I had no problems.
In 1986, you ended up in downtown in one of those psych ward housing units.
A psychiatric boarding house.
Yeah, and you're in there for about, I think it said it was 3 years, 3.5 years.
16 months. 16 months.
And during that time, you did tremendous research. I was reading this article written. Tremendous research. You started searching, alternative medicines, alternative, religions and stuff. What kind of stuff did you find that helped you with treating this illness you had that we could say that was better than the conventional treatment?
Well, I wouldn't really say anything is better than anything else. I say instead of being against something, I'm pro-choice. I'm pro-looking for all different avenues. So for the longest time, I was on the medical route, and it helped me in many ways. I was also on the psychological route with psychiatry and psychology and different practitioners and group therapy for over 25 years. I learned about myself, how emotions affect a person, and not that when a person has a mental illness, there has to be a psychological component, but I think in about most cases, probably, they're intertwined. Like I look at life holistically. Along the journey of overcoming and walking away from bipolar disorder 23 years ago, it set me on this marvelous learning curve that I never thought that I would. So from the meds to psychology, reading, experiencing, basically devouring any type of information that I could. And I still do. Now I do it through my radio show by having authors, mostly authors, on my radio show. I'm a lifelong learner, and I think it's a good way to be.
And you also did photography, and you put it into a book. I think the book is called Hope and Heroes.
Correct.
Quickly, could you talk about, you went to 200 publishers in order to get it out. Mm-hmm. What I'd like to talk about is the leading up to the publication of this book, who inspired you to do it, and what kind of feedback have you received from it?
Well, I was in conversation with Charles Templeton, who died from Alzheimer's a few years ago. Many of the older listeners will have heard of him. He was a very famous man who was a good friend of Pierre Berton, and he was also a good friend of Billy Graham. And Charles went from being an evangelist to an agnostic. And in 1992, I called him up out of the phone book, just like you contacted me. I wanted to photograph him. And 6 years later, I called him up and said, your friend Billy Graham, can you ask him if I can photograph him? And Charles said to me these exact words. He said, I don't want to go into this thing blind. What exactly do I tell Billy Graham? And I said, tell Billy I'm doing a book of people of integrity and how they've impacted positively on the world, comma. And then I said to myself, what a great idea for a book. So the idea just came to me. Then I had a decision to make. Do I believe in it and try to move forward with it? Or do I just think, it's just a pipe dream? Well, I made a decision that why not try? Like most ideas, we always have a decision to make. Do we believe in it if it has worth, or do we think, no, it's just me, how could I do it? We always have that ability to move forward or to say, no. And maybe sometimes the thing is to say is no, but maybe the thing to say is yes. We always have that ability, and I try to remind people in my presentations to keep open all options, even when you think there's nothing ahead of you.
And can you talk about how the long road that you took to get to different publishing companies to finally one successful? How did it feel after 200 times?
I think I'm a poster child for persistent tenacity, perseverance. It's interesting with persistence. I felt great, but it's interesting. Sometimes when you knock on all the doors and they don't open, it's because you're doing it wrong. Or maybe you just don't have it together, or people don't understand it. But if you feel you're doing the right thing and you assess and reassess the goals, and people don't acknowledge it, then just keep trying. Just keep trying. Maybe you got to tweak it. So persistence, but also set goals and assess and reassess.
Well, how can we basically educate society to be more positive towards individuals that have mental health?
Well, I think two things. In the media, generally, they do not portray positive mental health stories. The major newspapers, the major media, you don't hear a lot about it. So the media should do more of it, like I do on my show, on 4 stations, radio stations in southwestern Ontario. The other thing to realize is that mental health issues are probably as common as physical issues, and it is easier in a sense to think, well, a guy has a broken leg or has diabetes, fine, but someone has mental health issues. But see, I think mental health issues are all around us, but we don't quite understand it. We hear of the successful business people. Right now we have a story going on with the mayor of Toronto. I'm not calling him mentally ill, but when people act improperly and wrongly or sometimes get arrested, we go, okay, legal, but that is a type of imbalance, and we don't look down on them as much as we look down on someone who has bipolar schizophrenia. I think my message is for society to say, well, there's always going to be problems in life, mental, physical, financial, whatever. Try not to look down, accept the person has a problem. Maybe we can help them, maybe we can't, but problems of all types are part of life.
And what is the one person in the book, let's say, that stands out in your mind, someone that inspired you to want to take that extra step?
Well, when I get that question, it's sort of hard. It's sort of like they're all my children in a way, but I'll zero in on 2 people. I met and photographed Nelson Mandela. It's when he was in Ottawa a few years ago. Briefly chatted with him, and what an icon of the world, of society. The other one is Julia Butterfly Hill, and she's on the wall just behind you. She lived in a giant redwood tree in Northern California for over about 2 years. And the reason she was in the tree is these activists were living on this platform in the tree for days and weeks at a time. So the lumber company, which actually owned the tree in the area, wouldn't chop down this giant redwood tree. These are environmental activists. And once she got up there, she said she wouldn't come down till the tree was saved. So I spent 4 hours doing an interview like you're doing, except I was 100 feet up in a giant redwood tree on top of a mountain in Northern California. So fascinating, just fascinating. Every story to me was unique and fascinating. A real treat.
And for the youth right now, they want to get into photography, want to get into writing, even the radio host. Mm-hmm. What kind of suggestions might you give them? Areas that they should start exploring just to get some experience.
I think it's like anything. When one sets a goal, be it photography or radio, or you want to have a book, or you want to start your own, catering company. It's a process. It's a process of looking at what the strengths are, And from the strengths, what does one want to do for a business? And then all the books that I read as I was rebuilding my life is, have the goal, you got to write it down. It's the first step of making it tangible. Write it down, see if you need education, see if you need financing, how do you get it? Do you need a mentor? It's always helpful to have someone you can look up to. Work a plan. Just work a plan step by step, knock on the doors out. And I also go by salesman's odds. Salesman's odds are knock on 10 doors, one will open. And I'd say either on bad doors or bad sales ability, knock on 20 doors, or maybe people just aren't interested. 1 in 10 doors or 1 in 20 doors, one will always open. And they may not even say yes, but they may direct you to another direction or another door. Because generally people like to support people who are trying. I believe that.
And the question I have to ask you, looking back at your own pathway that you've now traveled in life, what is the biggest thing that you've learned that has helped you to carry on to the next day, let's say day-to-day sort of thing?
I'm going to quote from the book, The Road Less Traveled. Have you heard of that book?
Sorry, not offhand.
By a Dr. M. Scott Peck. The first sentence of the first paragraph of the book, The Road Less Traveled, goes something like this. Life is trouble. Life is full of trouble and problems. Accept it. That is normal. And since that's part of life, then continue on. Problems will always and challenges will always be part of life. Accept it. Learn what you can. Then how do you move forward?
And the question I have to ask you, with so many veterans nowadays, I know in the United States they're showing how many veterans have committed suicide.
Oh, yeah.
There's more than basically were killed in Iraq. But in Canada, they're not showing that many, but we're hearing 1 or 2 stories that are coming out. What kind of advice could you possibly, provide to someone, let's say, who's a veteran, or even someone who's not a veteran that's going through traumatic times this time, PTSD or even bipolar disorder? What kind of advice could you give them to help them, with their own illness right now?
I'd say a few things, whatever it be mental health related or a PTSD, facing physical, mental health challenges, is to believe that there's something good that will come from the bad. There's always something one can learn, understanding that by facing and working with challenges and obstacles, one thing is guaranteed, that one will move forward, one will learn. May not be easy, but life is not always supposed to be easy. Life is meant to be there. Bad things happen. Sometimes good things come from bad.
And with your radio shows right now, what do you feel that, who's the one guest that really sticks out in your mind? The reason why I'm asking that is because, everyone, we have a hero in life, and we get a chance to sit down with them. It's the message that they share with us. During your radio show, what kind of guest and what kind of message you feel that they've shared?
Well, I've now been broadcasting for 7.5 years. Every Sunday I go to Kitchener. The shows are rebroadcast the next week, a short plug, in London, Kitchener, and Brantford. You can access it anywhere in the world through barryshainbaum.com, click on radio. I have a wide range of guests. One of the mandates that I've chosen for the show was Overcoming Adversity. I've had a lot of academics and doctors and people who tell their stories of overcoming mental or physical adversity or abuse or any other areas of challenges. It's hard to choose any one guest or any 2 guests, but every single person is trying to make a difference. And I look at the show as supporting critical thinking. And what is life if we don't try to use our, one might say, God-given talents and abilities to use our heads? Did I answer your question on that one? Or did I?
Yeah, I mean, we're actually, I believe that what happens is we're all the same. We're all given gifts in life, and at the same time, it's up to us to use the gifts to help better other people's life. That's what I totally believe in. But at the same time, what is finally? What is the one message you want to leave with everyone as we close off right now?
Well, it's the same message as some people said to me in my book, Hoping Heroes. Never give up. Messages I say is this. Find hope however you can. look for the good. You have to accept that there's challenges in life. Persist, have goals, reassess the goals, learning, self-learning courses, or just going to the library. Every day we have opportunities to look at where we are and try to better our life and for others, or we can choose not to. There's nothing wrong with having a bad day, week, or a bad month, or even a bad year, but once we pick ourselves up, what can we do consciously to live a more fulfilling day, week, life, year existence? And I believe that every single person has that opportunity, even through great challenges.
And actually, one more question popped in my mind.
No extra charge.
I know that you've been 23 years now without any mental illness.
Right.
How is it, do you feel that your mental illness is totally gone right now, or do you feel that you might have a relapse happening in the future? So what I'm trying to find out, are there any basically symptoms that might, over time sort of creep up on you, sort of thing?
Well, I can't say in the full moon I howl, but only every few years. I don't have the illness anymore. I evolved, transformed out of it, and help you understand. And what I say to some of my groups is, when I was 18, I was a normal, typical, long-haired teenager, one might say. The next day, I fell mentally ill. And it was a long journey of around 20 years to get past it totally. But when I explained it and say that the day before I got sick, I was, quote, healthy, is it so illogical to believe or guess that, surmise that 20 or so years later, with a lot of meds, psychotherapy, evolving through suffering, reading, experiencing, transforming back? So it took me around 20 years. People often say, well, okay, I never heard. Well, of course you don't hear it in the paper or the media, because good news stories aren't as common as bad news stories, because bad news stories tend to perk our ears up more. It's just the way I think we're wired. So, people can change, and I did, totally.
Well, I just wanted to thank Barry so much for your time. I want to say in closing that, what we as individuals need to do is we need to stop labeling each other. We need to start accepting everyone that we are our brothers and sisters keeper. We need to start working together for the betterment of society. And through our lives, some of the people are going to stumble along the way. And what makes society that much better is that each of us have to reach down and help our brother, help our sister who stumbled along the way, and learn from the mistakes they've made from our past, the most important thing. Thank you so much for your time there, Barry.
My pleasure and my honor. Thank you.